They thought she was trapped. Soldiers cornered her in a bar. Then the SEAL reveal shocked everyone.
You can't sit there. You can't sit there.
In the gleaming corridors of the Pentagon, where power echoed through marble halls and respect was measured in stars and stripes, one woman was about to shatter every assumption about who deserved to be heard. Her name was Lieutenant Commander Eliza Harper. She carried more than just a briefcase that morning. She carried the weight of every doubt, every dismissal, and every door that had been closed in her face. But today, those doors would swing wide open, and the world inside would never be the same. Lieutenant Commander Eliza Harper adjusted her uniform one final time before approaching the briefing room. The Pentagon's corridors hummed with the quiet efficiency of military precision. Officers moved with purpose, their footsteps creating a symphony of discipline against the polished floors. Elisa had walked these halls countless times, yet today felt different. Today, she would step into a room where she had never been invited, but absolutely belonged. The young security guard stationed outside. The briefing room door stood rigid, his fresh face betraying his inexperience. He couldn't have been more than 23, recently assigned to this prestigious posting, eager to prove himself by following every rule to the letter. His name tag read Anderson, and his eyes carried the zealousness of someone who believed authority came from the uniform, not the person wearing it. Eliza approached with measured steps, her tablet tucked professionally under her arm. Through the glass panel beside the door, she could see them, the generals, the admirals, the decision-makers who shaped national security with every conversation. Holographic displays flickered above the conference table, showing tactical positions and strategic projections. This was the inner sanctum, where wars were planned and prevented, where the fate of thousands hung on every calculated move. "Ma'am, you can't sit there," Anderson said sharply, stepping into her path. His hand gestured dismissively toward a bench in the hallway, the kind reserved for assistants and aides waiting for their superiors. Eliza stopped, meeting his eyes with a calm she had perfected over years of similar encounters. "I'm here for the briefing," she said simply, her voice neither aggressive nor apologetic. Anderson's expression hardened into a smirk that betrayed his assumption. He had seen her rank lieutenant commander, and in his limited understanding, that rank didn't belong in a room full of generals. "This briefing is for senior leadership only. I'll need to see your authorization." She could have argued. She could have pulled rank, cited protocols, or demanded to speak with his supervisor. But Eliza had learned something valuable throughout her military career. Sometimes the most powerful move is patience. Let them underestimate you. Let them assume. Then, when the moment arrives, strike with undeniable truth. "I understand your concern," Elisa replied evenly, pulling out her visitor badge, the generic one given at security checkpoints. She held it up, watching Anderson's confidence grow as he examined it. "Yeah, see, this doesn't grant access to classified operational briefings," he said, his tone now carrying a hint of condescension. "These meetings are way above your clearance level. You'll need to wait out here, ma'am." Through the glass, Eliza watched as a 3-star general pointed at satellite imagery, his movements decisive and commanding. She recognized him, General Whitmore, a man who had built his reputation on aggressive tactical strikes. Beside him sat Admiral Chen, the Navy's strategic mastermind, and Colonel Bradford, known for his expertise in cyber warfare. These were the titans of military strategy, and in Anderson's mind, they existed in a different universe from the woman standing before him. "Are you certain about that?" Eliza asked, her voice still measured, but carrying an edge that made Anderson pause. "Ma'am, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. You can take a seat over there, or I can call someone to escort you back too before you finish that sentence." Eliza interrupted gently. "I want you to consider something. Have you verified who I am beyond a visitor badge?" Anderson blinked, uncertainty flickering across his features. Your rank is commander. This is a general's meeting. And you assume that rank determines relevance?" Eliza's fingers moved to her uniform, not to the visitor badge, but to her actual Pentagon-issued identification badge clipped inside her jacket. With deliberate precision, she pulled it out and let it catch the light. The badge gleamed, not the simple plastic of a visitor pass, but the sophisticated embedded chip identification that only the most critical personnel possessed, and they're unmistakable and undeniable. Was the Pentagon seal, embossed in silver and gold? Surrounding her photograph, rank, and a string of clearance codes that Anderson's eyes couldn't even begin to comprehend. His face went pale. The corridor seemed to hold its breath. "I am Lieutenant Commander Eliza Harper," she said, her voice now carrying the full weight of her authority. "Lead strategist for Operation Iron Shield. Clearance level, TSSCI with special operational access." "I don't need permission to enter that room, Guard Anderson. I need you to open the door." Anderson stumbled backward, his hand instinctively moving to his radio. But before he could call for verification, the door opened from the inside. General Whitmore himself stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from irritation at the interruption to surprise at seeing Eliza. "Commander Harper," he said, and his tone carried recognition, respect, and just a hint of embarrassment. "We weren't expecting you to attend in person." Eliza smiled, not smugly, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had just proven a point without saying a word. "I wasn't expecting to be stopped by a hallway guard, General, but here we are." Behind her, Anderson had gone completely silent, his earlier confidence evaporating like morning fog. The briefing room fell into a hushed tension as Eliza Harper crossed the threshold. Every eye in the room tracked her movement, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed skepticism, and a few with dawning recognition. The holographic displays continued their silent rotation, casting blue and green light across faces that had seen decades of combat and strategy. But in that moment, all their experience couldn't prepare them for what was about to unfold. General Whitmore stepped aside, allowing Eliza to enter fully. The room was exactly as she'd imagined it through countless planning sessions, a circular table designed to eliminate hierarchy, though everyone knew hierarchy existed in every glance and gesture. Admiral Chen sat to the left, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, her expression unreadable. Colonel Bradford drummed his fingers on the table, impatient and already dismissive. 3 other generals occupied seats, their chests heavy with medals that told stories of wars and victories. And then there was the chair, the central seat, directly facing the main display screen, empty, waiting. Commander Admiral Chen spoke first, her voice measured and diplomatic. "I believe there's been some confusion. This briefing concerns Operation Iron Shield's command structure moving forward. While we appreciate your contribution to the preliminary planning phases," "Preliminary?" Eliza repeated, setting her tablet on the table with a soft click that somehow commanded attention. "Admiral, with respect, there's been no confusion. I am here because I am the briefing." Younger officer Captain Martinez, barely 30 and clearly out of his depth, laughed under his breath. It was a short, nervous sound that he tried to disguise as a cough, but it echoed in the silent room. Several of the generals exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from amusement to concern. Colonel Bradford leaned forward, his voice carrying the gravelly weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Commander, I think what Admiral Chen is trying to say is that operational briefings of this magnitude are typically conducted by whom, Colonel?" Eliza interrupted, her voice still calm, but now edged with steel. "By officers with more stars? More years? More testosterone?" The room went completely silent. Even the holographic displays seemed to pause in their rotation. Eliza didn't wait for an answer. She activated her tablet, and the main screen behind her erupted with data-detailed satellite imagery, troop movement algorithms, risk assessment matrices, and communication intercept analysis. Every piece of information bore one consistent signature in the corner: E. Harper. Lead strategist, TSSCI clearance. Operation Iron Shield, Eliza began, her voice now filling the room with undeniable authority. Was conceived 14 months ago, when intelligence suggested a coordinated strike on 3 naval installations in the Pacific corridor. Traditional defensive postures would have left us vulnerable to exactly the kind of asymmetric warfare our adversaries specialize in. She moved through the data with practiced precision, each swipe of her hand revealing another layer of strategic planning. I proposed a counterintuitive approach. Instead of fortifying our installations, we made them appear vulnerable while creating a network of mobile rapid response units. The enemy would see weakness and commit resources, revealing their full operational capacity. General Whitmore's expression had shifted from polite tolerance to genuine attention. The Pacific Corridor operation. That was 3 months ago. The one that prevented what could have been the worst naval loss since Pearl Harbor, Eliza finished. Yes, General. That was my plan. My execution. My success. Captain Martinez had stopped smirking. His face had gone ashen as he pulled up his own tablet, frantically searching databases. When his eyes found the confirmation he dreaded, he sank lower in his seat. Admiral Chen spoke again. But this time her voice carried a different tone, respect, mingled with curiosity. Commander Harper, your file. It's heavily redacted. Even at my clearance level, I can only see operational outcomes, not the strategists behind them. That's intentional, Eliza replied, turning to face the Admiral directly. I operate in shadows because that's where the most critical work happens. You don't need to know my face to trust my judgment. You need to know my results. She pulled up another displayer list of operations spanning the past 5 years. Each one bore a classified designation. But the outcomes were clear. Prevented conflicts, neutralized threats, saved lives. Hundreds of lives. Thousands. Operation Sandstone in the Middle East, she continued, pointing to one entry, prevented a biological weapons transfer by redirecting supply chains and creating false intelligence that turned enemy factions against each other. No shots fired. No American casualties. Another swipe. Operation Blackwater in Eastern Europe. Identified and neutralized a cyber attack on NATO infrastructure 48 hours before execution. The attackers never knew we saw them coming. With each revelation, the atmosphere in the room transformed. The skepticism that had greeted her entrance now gave way to something else: recognition of mastery. Acknowledgement of expertise that transcended rank or appearance. Colonel Bradford cleared his throat. His earlier dismissiveness replaced by grudging respect. Commander, if what you're saying is accurate, and clearly it is, then why the secrecy? Why not claim credit? Eliza smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because credit is a distraction, Colonel. The moment people know who I am, they start questioning whether I deserve to be here. They start wondering if I earned my position, or if I was given special treatment. They start doubting not because of my work, but because of their assumptions about who should be doing this work. She let that statement hang in the air, watching as its weight settled on every person in the room. Even General Whitmore, a man who had commanded thousands of soldiers, looked uncomfortable. So I stayed invisible, Eliza continued. I let others take credit. I let you all believe the strategies came from your own brilliant minds. And it worked. Until today, when I decided that invisibility, while tactically sound, was strategically limiting. What changed? Admiral Chen asked softly. Eliza pulled up the final display. New threat assessment. Something none of them had seen yet. What changed is this. We're facing a coordinated operation that makes the Pacific Corridor look like a training exercise. 3 adversarial nations working together, planning simultaneous strikes across 4 continents. Traditional command structures won't work. Egos won't work. What we need is something different. She paused, meeting each person's eyes in turn. We need leadership that thinks differently, that sees patterns others miss, that isn't bound by conventional military doctrine, because conventional doctrine is exactly what they're counting on. General Whitmore stood, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, Eliza wondered if he would order her removal, if the revelation of her role would be too much for military hierarchy to accept. Instead, he extended his hand across the table. Commander Harper, he said, his voice carrying genuine respect, I believe we owe you an apology. And more importantly, we owe you our complete attention. Please, take the chair. Your chair? Lisa Harper looked at the extended hand, then at the chair, the seat of ultimate operational authority in this room. The moment stretched, pregnant with possibility and meaning. Outside, through the glass panel, she could see Guard Anderson watching, his face a mixture of shame and awe. Beyond him, the Pentagon's corridors continued their rhythmic flow of personnel. Everyone moving with purpose. Everyone convinced they knew exactly how power worked in this building. They were all wrong. Power. Elisa had learned through years of being underestimated. Dismissed and overlooked wasn't about the chair you sat in. It wasn't about the stars on your shoulder or the medals on your chest. Power was about the moment you chose to reveal yourself, to step from shadow into light, and to say, I am here. I have always been here, and you will listen. She shook General Whitmore's hand firmly, feeling the calluses of a career soldier against her palm. Then she turned to Admiral Chen, to Colonel Bradford, to Captain Martinez, who still looked like he wanted to disappear into the Florand, to every other officer in that room. Before I accept that chair, Eliza said quietly, I need you all to understand something. I'm not here to prove I'm as good as you. I'm not here to demonstrate that women belong in strategic command, though we absolutely do. I'm here because our nation faces a threat that requires every brilliant mind we have. Regardless of rank, gender, or how well we fit into traditional structures. She walked slowly around the table, her fingers trailing along the back of each chair. I spent 5 years being invisible because I thought that was the only way to do meaningful work. I convinced myself that credit didn't matter, that recognition was vanity, that results were enough. And maybe they were. Maybe they still are. Admiral Chen leaned forward, her expression earnest. But, Eliza continued, I've realized that my invisibility, while protecting me from bias, also protects the system that created that bias in the first place. Every time I let someone else take credit for my work, I reinforce the belief that people who look like me, who are ranked like me, don't belong in rooms like this. And that's not just unfair, it's dangerous for everyone. She pulled up the threat assessment again. The data painting a grim picture of coordinated attacks designed to exploit every weakness in American defense infrastructure. This operation they're planning? It's sophisticated because it was designed by people who think differently. People who don't fit their military's traditional mold. People who were underestimated and used that underestimation as a weapon. Colonel Bradford nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. They expect us to respond with conventional tactics. Exactly, Eliza confirmed. They expect General Whitmore's aggressive strikes. They expect Admiral Chen's naval strategies. They expect Colonel Bradford's cyber countermeasures. They've studied all of you, predicted all of you, prepared for all of you. What they haven't prepared for is the strategist they don't know exists. She finally moved to the central chair, resting her hand on its back. This chair represents something more than operational command. It represents a choice we're all making right now. Either we continue operating the way we always have, predictably, traditionally, acceptably, or we embrace something different. Captain Martinez, who had been silent since his earlier embarrassment, spoke up hesitantly. Commander, I need to apologize. When you walked in, you assumed what everyone assumes, Eliza interrupted gently. That authority has a certain look, a certain rank, a certain presentation. I'm not angry at you, Captain. I'm asking you to be better. I'm asking all of us to be better. Gosh. She sat down in the chair, feeling its weight settle around her. The holographic displays reflected in her eyes, data and possibilities swirling together. Here's what I'm proposing. For the next 72 hours, I lead this operation my way. No committee decisions. No second guessing. No asking if I'm sure, or suggesting we run it by someone else first. You trust my judgment the same way you would trust a general's judgment, and we see what happens. General Whitmore crossed his arms, but his expression wasn't defensive. It was thoughtful. And if we disagree with your approach, then you voice that disagreement, Eliza said firmly. I'm not asking for blind obedience. I'm asking for equal treatment. Disagree with my tactics if you think they're wrong, but disagree because they're wrong. Not because you're uncomfortable with who's suggesting them. Admiral Chen smiled, a real smile that transformed her stern features. Commander Harper, I've been in this Navy for 32 years. I've seen brilliant officers passed over for promotion because they didn't fit someone's idea of what leadership should look like. I've seen good people leave the service because fighting for recognition was more exhausting than fighting the enemy. If there's even a chance that your approach works, not just for this operation, but as a model for how we identify and empower talent, then you have my full support, one by one. The others nod at some immediately, others after a moment's hesitation. Even Captain Martinez, still red-faced but determined, straightened in his chair and said, "I'm with you." "Commander?" Lisa felt something unfamiliar arise in her chest. Not pride, though there was that, but something deeper. Hope. The possibility that this moment might matter beyond the immediate threat, beyond the tactical victory. That maybe, just maybe, she could change not just the outcome of one operation, but the culture that had tried to keep her out of this room in the first place. "Then let's begin," she said, her fingers dancing across the tablet as she pulled up detailed operational plans. "Our adversaries expect us to defend. Instead, we're going to attack, but not where they think, not how they think, and not when they think. We're going to use every unconventional tool in our arsenal. And we're going to win because they can't prepare for what they can't predict." For the next 3 hours, Eliza walked them through a strategy so innovative, so unexpected that it took everyone's breath away. She combined naval maneuvers with cyber warfare, psychological operations with economic pressure, creating a multi-dimensional approach that would make their enemies question every assumption they'd built their attack plan on. As the briefing concluded, General Whitmore stood again. "Commander Harper, regardless of how this operation turns out, I want you to know something. Today, you didn't just present a tactical plan. You taught us all a lesson about leadership, about courage, and about the cost of our own blind spots." "Thank you." Liza stood, gathering her tablet. Through the glass panel, she could see that the hallway had filled with officers and staff, all of them watching the briefing room with curiosity. Word had spread, as it always did in the Pentagon. The woman who had been blocked by a security guard was now commanding the attention of the military's highest leadership. As she walked toward the door, it opened from the outside. Guard Anderson stood there, his face still showing the shame of his earlier mistake. But Eliza saw something else in his eyes, too understanding, and a determination to do better. "Commander," he said, snapping to attention with perfect military precision, "I apologize for my conduct earlier. It was unprofessional and unacceptable." Liza paused, studying the young man. She could humiliate him, could report him, could make him an example. Instead, she saw an opportunity. "Anderson," she said, her voice kind but firm. "You did what you were taught to do: follow protocol, respect rank, enforce rules. The problem isn't that you did those things. The problem is that the system taught you to see rank and clearance as the only measures of who deserves respect and access. Learn from this. Not everyone who has earned their place looks the way you expect them to look." He nodded, his jaw tight with emotion. "Yes, ma'am. I will, ma'am." As Elisa walked through the now crowded hallway, she heard whispers following her. Some were surprised, some were inspired, and yes, some were still skeptical. She didn't mind. Skepticism could be overcome with results. What mattered was that the conversation was happening. She passed junior officers who watched her with new awareness, seeing possibility where they might have seen limitation before. She passed senior leaders who nodded with respect, some of them perhaps reconsidering their own assumptions about talent and leadership. And she passed support staff, the assistants, the administrators. The people who made the Pentagon function saw in their faces something that moved her deeply: recognition that someone like them, someone who had been underestimated, had just proven that excellence couldn't be defined by traditional measures alone. Outside the Pentagon, the afternoon sun painted the building in golden light. Elisa stood for a moment, breathing in the crisp air, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle into her bones. She had revealed herself, stepped out of the shadows, and claimed the space she had always deserved, but never demanded. Her phone buzzed. A message from General Whitmore. "Operation approved. You have operational command. Make us proud." She smiled, typing back, "I'll make us effective. Pride will be a bonus." She walked toward her car. Eliza thought about all the times she had been told she couldn't sit there, couldn't speak up, couldn't lead. She thought about every door that had been closed, every assumption that had been made. Every moment she had to be twice as good to get half the recognition. And she thought about the younger version of herself, the lieutenant who had first walked into the Pentagon, full of brilliant ideas and crushing doubt, wondering if she would ever be seen for who she truly was. To that younger version, to every person who had ever felt invisible in a room full of people who should have noticed their brilliance, Eliza had one message: keep going, stay excellent. And when the moment comes when the door is blocked and the assumptions are made and everything in you screams to stay, quiet and safe, reveal yourself. Not with anger, not with apology, but with the undeniable truth of your capability. Because power isn't given. It's earned, yes, but more importantly, it's claimed. It's stepping forward when everything tells you to step back. It's saying, I belong here when everyone else says you don't. It's being patient when patience serves you and bold when boldness is required. The Pentagon seal on her badge caught the light one final time as she drove away. That seal had opened the door today, but Eliza knew the truth. She had opened the door herself. Years ago, with every brilliant strategy, every quiet success, every moment, she chose excellence over comfort. And now, that door would be harder to close not just for her, but for everyone who came after her. That was the real victory. That was the moment that mattered. In the briefing room, operations would continue. In the hallways, conversations would spread. In offices across the Pentagon, people would reconsider what leadership looked like, who deserved opportunity, how talent could be recognized even when it didn't fit traditional expectations. But for Eliza Harper, the real story had always been simpler. She had work to do, a nation to protect, and a future to shape where the next brilliant strategist wouldn't have to fight quite so hard to be seen. She couldn't sit there, they had said, but she had. And in sitting there, she had changed everything.